yourself and the other that stands in front of you is really important. I think to have empathy is really important, and to work on empathetic behavior allows you a great deal. I think the capacity to listen and to hear is very important. And then the capacity to be willing to compromise is really important. And I think the capacity to allow yourself to continue to form even. Yes, you stand for something, but perhaps, just perhaps, you might want to redefine even more sharply what it is you believe you believe. And give yourself room to see that. Give yourself room that when you look into someone else's eyes and you see yourself and you see the things that they're saying and you understand that it affects you, give yourself the ability to be able to say, okay, I guess I do see this point. That's a new part of you. And to understand that that new part of you expands you, makes you larger, makes you greater. And I think that would be simple antidotes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
The concept of being able to see yourself and the other that stands in front of you is really important. I think to have empathy is really important, and to work on empathetic behavior allows you a great deal. I think the capacity to listen and to hear is very important. And then the capacity to be willing to compromise is really important. And I think the capacity to allow yourself to continue to form even. Yes, you stand for something, but perhaps, just perhaps, you might want to redefine even more sharply what it is you believe you believe. And give yourself room to see that. Give yourself room that when you look into someone else's eyes and you see yourself and you see the things that they're saying and you understand that it affects you, give yourself the ability to be able to say, okay, I guess I do see this point. That's a new part of you. And to understand that that new part of you expands you, makes you larger, makes you greater. And I think that would be simple antidotes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
The concept of being able to see yourself and the other that stands in front of you is really important. I think to have empathy is really important, and to work on empathetic behavior allows you a great deal. I think the capacity to listen and to hear is very important. And then the capacity to be willing to compromise is really important. And I think the capacity to allow yourself to continue to form even. Yes, you stand for something, but perhaps, just perhaps, you might want to redefine even more sharply what it is you believe you believe. And give yourself room to see that. Give yourself room that when you look into someone else's eyes and you see yourself and you see the things that they're saying and you understand that it affects you, give yourself the ability to be able to say, okay, I guess I do see this point. That's a new part of you. And to understand that that new part of you expands you, makes you larger, makes you greater.
Ooh. Wow.
I think that would be.
Was the first time that this
antidotes.
work version was screened in a public, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Was it okay? Oh,
It's always a very emotional moment for a filmmaker.
yeah, my God.
Sort of like giving birth, right?
Well, I have 2 kids, but I haven't really pushed them out myself. So, but of course, it's it's a job.
It's a job. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an emotional job
Yeah.
to do it. So it's an astonishing film, and we're so deeply proud to present it as a special screening tonight before its world premiere. And your whole career as a filmmaker has been driven by the urge to film transversal thematics, Bananas and Big Boys Gone Bananas were dealing with the Dole Food Company and the way how the things we eat that are so unhealthy too, but killing also thousands of people on the ground. And then your next films, Bikes versus Cars, was dealing with the car industry and bicycles too. So what drove you to tell this story after these films? What was the push behind Push?
No, but for me, I mean, first of all, I've been working as a filmmaker for 20 years, but before that I was also a journalist, and I've been always writing a lot about cities. I've been interested in city planning, and about the forces who make cities look like they are. I mean, Bike versus Cars was about city planning.
Absolutely.
But it's also about, sometimes when we talk about traffic, we think it's like made by nature. It's like a natural development. But I mean, if you come in from the space into the earth and you see these cities where people are sitting in big monsters and they don't come in, they're just waiting for each other, it's like a bit absurd. So for me, it's a lobby-driven development. It's not a natural development. And I think we could take the same look at the cities. Why is it so expensive? Why are we paying so much for our rents than we did before? Why do governments have less money than they had before, and some private companies are almost printing their own money? Is that a natural development, or is it a lobby-driven development? Because sometimes when you listen to people talking about housing, for example, in TV or read about it, it's like a weather report, Sure. Houses are going up, it's gone down, it's going up, blah, blah, blah.
It's very abstract.
Yeah, but it's not the weather. This is a man-made situation. And if it's man-made, you can also, people can change it back. And that's why it's so cool with the shift, and it's so cool with people like Leilani, who are out there trying to raise the flag.
Absolutely, Leilani, that is really a drive in the film, which makes the film so not abstract, even coming from a seemingly abstract question. So did you meet Leilani when you knew you wanted to do this film, or was it the fact that you heard about Leilani that drove you to make this film?
No, I had this film in plan for a long time before I found Leilani. But it's always hard to know, how do you tell a story? How do you make this really complex thing?
How to bring emotion in this kind of topic?
Yeah, and I like emotions. I think it helps. But I mean, Leilani. I mean, in my previous film, Bike versus Cars, I had a Brazilian professor in the film, Raquel Rolnik.
Sort of the gatekeeper to the story.
Yeah, and she was there like more an expert in the film, but she was actually the predecessor, Leilani, as the special rapporteur. So when she stopped, I actually started to follow the new rapporteur on Twitter.
So you're a specialist of special rapporteurs.
I'm not. I didn't even know that they had
charismatic
to be honest,
special rapporteurs.
I didn't know what a special rapporteur was before. I had no clue. Did all of you know that?
Well, we're in Geneva, so...
Okay, so you're all special out there, yeah. But I mean, to be honest, I had no clue. But
the name doesn't really sound very...
So I was following Leilani for a while, and then I saw a story when she was interviewed in a Vancouver newspaper, and there was something that struck me of her quotes that I thought, wow, this is interesting, we should talk. Then I wrote to her on Twitter, and she actually came back, and then we had a Skype. And then I found out that this person could be strong on film. Documentary film is also a little bit about casting. If you have a boring person on camera, what will the film be? Boring. So it's very... It's not fair, but if you want the film to if you want audience to sit in for 90 minutes, you have to try to make the film interesting.
Yeah, if it also works with identifying with the character. Because Saskia Sassen and Roberto Saviona that you see are very charismatic too, but you cannot really, as a viewer, a TV viewer, so directly identify with them. But Leilani is wonderful because anyone can say, oh,
Yeah.
I could be her. We can all act, you know?
Yeah. It's also, I mean, there are different things here. It's, first of all, it's the functions in the film that Saskia and Stiglitz and Saviano, they are experts, I would say. So they are not out.
Leilani is an expert too.
She is, but in the role, she's more the private detective. That's the role she has in the film. So kind of, and it's been very interesting to work with Leilani because we've actually been almost talking to each other every day for 2 years.
So it lasted
And it's been
2
an
years?
interchange of ideas and questions because, I mean, I'm not an expert on housing and on the financial markets. I'm just a filmmaker. So I'm trying to understand things. And my take was, my idea was if I zoom out to a global level, because if I do it on the national levels, then you will have all this, the law from 1955, and it's so complicated and it's so boring, and it's hard. It's a hard story to tell. But when you zoom up, suddenly you see the patterns being repeated. I don't know if you could catch it in this film. I mean, people from different places were talking about thugs. I mean, during this work, I've heard stories about thugs moving in, kicking people out from their homes in Canada, in US, in Korea, in Barcelona. So, I mean, it's a very violent world right now. When the prices go up, there is the interest of using violence is there.
Absolutely.
So there are patterns
Social
being
violence too, of course.
Of course. And then I'd never heard the name of Blackstone before I started this project. And only in this, I mean, we will have the world premiere in Copenhagen now in 2 weeks. Blackstone just bought 10,000 apartments in Copenhagen. I was now actually in Greece at a workshop with film distributors from different countries who were going to show the film around Europe. And a guy from Slovenia said, oh, Blackstone just bought a lot of houses in our country, and they tried to buy the biggest bank. So it's that the speed they are moving in. Blackstone didn't own a single apartment in 2011. You know, what year is it now? 2019. And now they're the biggest landlord in the US, in Spain, on Ireland, but they're big everywhere. I don't know in Switzerland, but look out, you know. And they're not the only ones. They're the biggest ones, but it's the same model is there. And they are not a traditional landlord. They are, because a traditional landlord need to make money so he can invest them, you know. But they can just bring in money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like they're so cash rich. Yeah. It's kind of scary.
But speaking about money, was it a difficult film to fund? Or did you? If I know well, your last films were kick funded too. I know you did a Kickstarter campaign too, so
yeah.
It was complicated.
Documentary films are always hard to fund.
Absolutely.
Sadly. But I mean, we managed to fund it, but it's we're like here. It's so. If you have money somewhere, just please send us. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Still looking for funding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And is there an impact strategy? You know, the festival is organizing an impact day this year, where we're putting together actors of the International Geneva and filmmakers. So we are more and more speaking about these impact strategies. So what's next for the film first, and what can we do in the audience too for the film, but also for this topic?
Yeah, I mean, impact is that the film can make some kind of difference. And we are working with strategies with different partners. I mean, in Sweden, we are working with the tenant unions and with others. We also try to get more cities to sign the shift. In the US, we will have a big campaign with partners who are going to work a full year on with a focus on New York. But I think the stories coming out of New York will then be able to be copied towards other cities. In Spain, we work with a lot of very strong organizations because it's a country where the struggle has been really strong. So yeah, we have a lot of cooking, but I mean, we of course need more help. And to get the film out here in Switzerland, which we don't have any partners here.
You don't have a distributor yet?
Not yet. So, and I don't know if we'll be, hopefully we can get that. But overall, I mean, if you work for NGOs, if you have friends in other countries, I mean, tell people about the film. We have a Twitter account, Push the Film. We have a Facebook, an Instagram. I mean, help to share and talk about the film. It helps, you know, because we don't have any marketing money. We are not Hollywood, you know. So it's so with friends we all normally get longer, reach longer, you know.
I'm sure this film will have a huge career, and we are so proud that it started as a project in Geneva. Thank you so much, Frederick.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll
Thanks.
follow on with the debate.
No? No, it's not on. This one maybe?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is that better? Great, thank you. My name's Patrick Butler. I write on social affairs for The Guardian in London. I'm very proud to be invited out tonight to firstly see the very powerful film, and secondly to chair or moderate the discussion we're going to have about some of the issues within the film. I want to introduce the panel. Well, Leilani, you already know very, very well as a result, and Frederick, of course. I met Leilani and Frederick on a very, very cold day in London about a year ago, and we were looking at some multi-million-pound apartments in regenerated areas of London, and it really struck home in the film that this is the same all over the world. And on our far right, we have Maria Lucia de Pontes. Now, Maria is a Brazilian lawyer and public defender. She has worked with urban and rural land conflicts since 1999. Two big events that happened in Brazil over the last decade: World Cup 2014, Olympic Games 2016. Maria Lucia was active in fighting against evictions and slum clearances that took place to facilitate those two big global events. Maria speaks Brazilian, but not English, and she will have a translator, Berta, who is on hand. So when I put these headphones on, that's because we're hearing the translation. I wanted to start with Maria. Now, you have been an activist in housing for many, many years. What did you make of the film?
Boa noite a todas e todos. O filme é fantástico, queria parabenizar. E assim, incrível como pegou exatamente o grande conflito atual que vivemos quando a moradia ela é encarada como uma mercadoria, né? E como essa financiarização da vida e das cidades tem atingido a todas as pessoas em todo o mundo. Então, realmente, o filme me deixou muito impactada, muito mesmo. Parabéns.
I wanted to talk first about language. I was very struck in the film how, I think at one stage, Saskia Sassen said, we haven't yet found, she said, this is not about housing. And now this felt quite odd, because you go to a film like this and you think you're talking about housing. This is places where we live and that we have, it's where our families live and our communities. And I thought Saskia's point that, you know, we haven't yet found ways to describe it. Do you feel that this is true, that we haven't yet grasped the scale of the problem, because maybe we still think it's about housing when in fact it's about something else?
I mean, for me, it's very much a language thing. And it's not only the language in that we don't understand what's going on, is that the people with money have invented a new language that we kind of have accepted. We don't understand it. It's so confused. It's so many strange words. We don't, all these financial products, we don't have a clue what it is. So it's, and I also think that, and she also said here in the end of in the credits that we are using the same words for something that has totally changed. So, for example, gentrification is wherever I go in the world, people talk about gentrification, and I think that we should stop talking about gentrification. It's a very sloppy word, because when you try to use gentrification as this is going on here, gentrification is a natural development. It might be bad, but it's something that happens everywhere. One generation goes out, a new comes in. It's natural. What we see here around in the world right now in our cities is not a natural development. So we could as well call it land grabbing. We could call it something. This is what they do in Africa. You know, we steal people's land because we are actually pushing people out of our cities, like you did with the Native Americans once upon a time, for example.
Leilani.
Thanks. First of all, I just have to say I had not seen the film. I saw it the same time as you, the first time tonight, so I'm actually in recovery mode. On the issue of language, yeah, I mean, I think we're starting to find the language, and I think the language is financialization, but that is an obfuscating word. I mean, it doesn't talk about people. The word doesn't convey the idea of displacement, of pushing out, etc., which is why we need this film, because the film describes it so thoroughly and beautifully, actually. I'm finding even within my own movements, like within that right to housing movement, if there is one, the NGO sector hasn't even caught up with this. They're not grappling enough with this issue, and that's within the sector. So then we need other sectors to get involved and start grappling with it. So I think we're a little behind where these very clever financial folks have gone. I find I spend most of my time these days researching finance. That's everything I'm looking at is always about finance. I never thought as a human rights lawyer I would be where I am now, talking to pension funds and trying to understand what is in fact a very complicated landscape right now where housing is an asset. I mean, I think that there was a beautiful moment for me of clarity in the film. There were many, but there was one that's suited for this discussion, which is when Saskia has the voiceover, and what we're seeing is an empty unit unit in the UK, I think the Qatari unit, and she says, you know, it's better if they're empty because then we can change them, sell them, turn them into more assets, but put asset on top of asset. And I mean, I think this is about finance.
One thing that really struck me what struck me about the film was who this was happening to. And I think it's quite a conventional narrative that this kind of thing, land grabs, displacement, happens to poor people, to the working class, and that's a narrative we understand. What was striking about this film is this is also happening to the middle classes. Do you think that is significant?
It's obviously that's why everybody is talking about this now. This is like the stress of the globe. You can't go to any city around the world where people are not talking about housing prices. And if you are well off, your kids will not be well off. I mean, it's even if you are safe, your kids will not be able to live there. I mean, in Knightsbridge, where we filmed, where this guy was walking around, where everything is empty, before this was the kids of the lords who lived there. They're also out, you know. So this push forces are pushing people out from many different places, you know. So even the kids of the lords has been moved because of this money coming up from the top. It's kind of absurd.
Maria, well, I was just going to go to Maria Lucia. This issue of who this is affecting now, that it's not just the working class and the poor, is this significant, do you think?
Ah, sim. Isso realmente no filme é muito interessante, que mostra o que no Brasil as famílias mais pobres perceberam, né, como, por exemplo, a ida dos jogos, como a especulação chegava perto dessa área mais valorizada. E, infelizmente, uma parte da sociedade não percebia que aquilo era um processo que não ia atingir só os mais pobres. Nesse primeiro momento, no Rio de Janeiro, onde você tem 22% da população que mora em favelas, em territórios que a questão do título não é claro, essa é a primeira parte da cidade que vai ser atingida, mas esse processo não vai parar ali. Evidentemente que, para famílias tão pobres como no Rio, a perda da moradia é muito mais brutal, né? A moradia é a porta de entrada de todos os outros direitos. Numa população em que não tem direito à educação, saúde, segurança, perder a moradia é perder isso tudo junto. Mas esse é um processo que vai se desenvolvendo e vai atingir a classe média. Então, isso é importante que o filme mostra, né, uma coisa que, no Brasil, no Rio de Janeiro, é vista como um problema só dos pobres, mas não é. Né? Na verdade, o filme foi muito interessante em mostrar essa relação do dinheiro e da especulação do dinheiro em cima de um direito tão fundamental que é o direito à moradia. Então, isso é importante, precisa ser dito, precisa ser falado, e o filme toca muito bem, né, o trabalho da Leilani também fantástico, de pensar um movimento que seja, né, mas foi fantástico, e realmente isso é importante de mostrar, e o filme mostra perfeitamente.
Leilani, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's interesting that I do think that because this is affecting the middle classes, there's some kind of energy around it, especially or including from politicians. But as an international human rights lawyer, of course, my focus is on the most vulnerable. And what I'm seeing at the same time is when there's engagement from governments, they might be willing to try to solve that middle class piece. But by solving that middle class piece doesn't necessarily, the solutions, the ideas, the whatever, law, it's not necessarily going to be of benefit to the poorest communities. So for me, on the one hand, I'm happy, that's not the right word, but it's good that that because the middle class is so affected, this issue's getting energy, but on a solution side, it's a little problematic from a human rights point of view, for sure.
But do you think that it's often through the middle class, through their anxieties and their stresses, that politicians tend to respond, that policy will get made?
Yes, but not that would necessarily benefit the poorest people, because their circumstances are different. And, you know, for example, one of the big moves that governments have started to make is they're saying, okay, we'll start building or ensuring affordable housing is being built, at least in the north and the west. This is being talked about. And when they say that, they'll say, okay, well, 20% of any new builds will be affordable. And then they've reclaimed the word affordable, or they've claimed the word affordable, and they're saying it's like 80% of market rent or value. Well, for a middle class person, they might be able to pay 80%, but a poor person obviously can't pay 80% of market value. So it's just an example of a policy that might benefit the middle classes, but certainly won't benefit the poorest households.
I mean, one aspect in the film which is not so much is that the whole cities as we know them are under threat. The culture of cities, which we are normally, I mean, I was this summer in Naples, for example, where you still have poor people living in the middle of town. We don't see that so much more. If you go to London, where you live, I mean, there are people live in the States, there are still some, but most people have to commute. And that's like now the pattern of the world, that poor people are already pushed out of the cities and they have to commute in. So there is the working class is like moving out and in every morning. And it's and that, I mean, this is a very strong movement going on right now, which totally is destroying our cities. I mean, you can see that, I mean, also in this town, I mean, the cinemas are closing, a lot of stuff closes, rents goes up, the coffee everything gets more expensive. You know, it's like and as this baker in Berlin says, they put up his rent and they said it was the market. But the market has no relation to the customers on the street. I mean, normally you will raise the rent because there is so much, you're making so much money from your business. No, it's the value of the house.
You got a very strong sense in the film of the property market, if you like, being totally detached from people's lives, just existing on a sort of different economic plane completely. And clearly that would seem on the face of it to be unsustainable. Did you pick up any evidence on your travels that the market on its own was correcting for the fact that no one could afford to live here or no one could afford to rent?
I mean, I don't know how this will end, but, and I mean, Saskia says, well, it will go down.
Yeah.
And the Blackstones and all these guys, they will probably move out in good time, and then they will leave the shit to the pension funds who are sitting there with overvaluated houses that they probably will stop repair. So we will have a lot of new slums coming up, overvaluated houses nobody cares to fix. I mean, it's not a beautiful future because, as she says, it's mining. You know, when they're taking what they need, they leave just a hole.
Leilani, do you see any evidence at all that the correction is coming?
Well, in your, is it on? Yeah. In your city city, in London, they've been saying that there has been a correction. And in Melbourne and Sydney, they're saying, in Australia, they're saying there's been a correction. But I spend a lot of time reading the Financial Times, and I read the real estate section, and I look at, property values and all of that. And what they mean by a correction is, a flat that could have got £25 million in a certain neighborhood like Kensington, Chelsea, now will only get 23 million pounds. Like, so if that's the correction we're looking at, to me, that's not a very, it's not a correction that's going to benefit people who are the lowest income. And this issue of mining, I think Saskia Sassen, I mean, she's brilliant in so many ways, but that metaphor of mining is so correct, because once you start digging, what you realize these private equity firms do is they have some computer software that helps them analyze different neighborhoods around the world. And right now they've figured out that all parts of Europe have what they call undervalued, and I put it in quotes, but undervalued properties. That is, properties that could still be squeezed for more profits for investors. And so they're doing this constant scan, just like you would with mining, looking for gold, right? So they're looking for gold in all of these neighborhoods. And so I don't see it ending, because they keep picking up markets where they can make more money.
And you can already see it around the big cities where people commute, the price is going up. So it's people commute further and further out. So the working class will be sleeping on trains. Yeah. There are already, yeah.
Maria Lucia, do you see any signs at all that things are changing, that there is a correction?
Olha, tá um pouquinho alto, tá bom? Primeiro, acho que é difícil corrigir um sistema financeiro, né, que vai querer cada vez mais e mais e mais. Pelo menos no Rio de Janeiro, nós trabalhamos com a ideia de que as pessoas, que os mais pobres, discutam o direito à moradia como um direito humano fundamental, parte de mínimo existencial de todo indivíduo. E, a partir desse entendimento, construir proteções nos territórios para que aqueles territórios sejam reservados às pessoas mais pobres, aos trabalhadores que vão ter acesso àquele território. No Rio de Janeiro, nós temos, como eu falei, 22% da população que mora em favelas, né, em territórios que eu chamo construído por trabalhadores, e que, por uma questão de interesse imobiliário, ele é tocado e começa a se fazer todo um movimento de retirada desses trabalhadores, e aí esse movimento tão importante da época da Copa e das Olimpíadas, que foi dizer: a moradia não é uma mercadoria, ele é um direito fundamental, e os pobres têm que ter direito a esse território. Então, no Rio, o trabalho é pensar em garantir que essas populações continuem morando no mesmo território onde estão morando. Claro que no filme mostra outras situações em que as pessoas já foram expulsas e o mercado já tomou conta desse lugar. E aí tem que se fazer realmente alguma coisa, como Berlim mostrou, muito interessante, um movimento de comprar novamente, né, de se reapropriar dessas moradias para que a cidade não se transforme numa cidade de negócios, né? Você perde toda a essência da cidade enquanto lugar de encontro, um lugar de exercício de outros direitos. Você passa a ter uma cidade que ninguém vive, né? Então, isso é importante, o filme mostra isso muito bem, né? Então, acho que eu penso mais nesse trabalho, de fazer um trabalho de discutir a moradia como um direito humano, e que isso, de uma certa maneira, fique reservado, que não vá para o mercado, especialmente para as financeiras, né? Que, como mostrou no filme, uma pessoa compra 10 vezes, 20 vezes o mesmo imóvel, e aquilo ali vira um negócio. Então, é uma especulação. Você ganha dinheiro em cima de um negócio, e não você não tem um fim para a moradia, você tem um fim para lucro para acumulação. Então, eu não consigo visualizar como fazer essa compensação, esse acerto, né? Pelo menos no Brasil é impensável, mas acho que todas as ideias devem chegar, né? Porque nós estamos num mundo global e é importante pensar nisso também.
If the market is not going to correct itself, then where do we think that the consequences are being felt by ordinary people? What do we think the consequences will be, and where will the resistance begin? I mean, who is it that it's going to resist, and what will they do? How will they resist?
I mean, it's in cities around the world, young people are out protesting. You see that in Germany a lot right now, but also, I think it was also now in Slovenia. I mean, it's countries around the world. In Spain, it's a big thing. So I think you will see it in that kind of protest form. But it's also mayors from parties that have like voters from normal people. They're also under stress. We're talking about the Social Democrats and so on. They're under stress because their voters are moving out from their cities, you know. So I mean, that will also be a problem for London. You know, Sami Kanaan he's now the mayor, but if all Labour voters are forced out, so for the politicians, they have to do something, and they feel the stress. They totally feel the stress, but they are really late on it. You know, they lost so many years of market solutions. They all believe that the market will in one way, that the magic of the market would save everything, and it didn't happen. So now they're, oh shit, and we have no money, because the unbalance, because as the hedge fund been able to print money themselves, the cities only have the tax money. So it's like they're much more unequal than ever, which is also a very strange situation.
Sorry.
Yeah, I might add to that. I mean, the idea of the shift was that we know there are people resisting. We saw the women in the park in Chile and Valparaiso, and we know from around the world there are people, but not just social movements resisting, but lots of different actors. So, you know, that's the idea of the shift, is to go after all the stakeholders. So we know there are some cities and mayors who are resisting and saying, this is unsustainable in my city. We know there are lawyers doing the same thing, litigating, doing strategic litigation. We know there are social movements. I've recently been in conversation with national human rights institutions who are saying, we have a role to play in this too. I'm starting to engage and trying to look for progressive private equity firms. Believe it or not, there are some out there. There's a Faire B&B movement in Canada, for example. So, but the problem is, at least from my perspective, is that this is all happening in these like little piecemeal ways, and there's nothing to show that we are actually a global movement. And that's the idea of the shift, is to show all of the work under one umbrella, that there are a million shifters around the world just as strong as Blackstone.
I mean, it struck me in the film that a lot of the organized political resistance or established political resistance was local. So it was coming from cities. Now, lots of cities, London included, there is not really that much power invested in the mayor to do something. To what extent do you think the established national political parties have grasped this issue?
I think this is the language thing that I've started to talk about before. The language that the national politicians are stuck with is a language constructed by lobbyists and their think tanks. So as soon as the national politician have talking points that goes away from the talking points from the lobbyists, he will get a shitstorm. through media and through the other parties. So it's very hard to go against these kind of goods from the think tanks and the lobbyists. And I think and that's my hope with the film and with the shift. And so it's actually to be able to create this counter language. I think even the word push is something that I found around the world. People are talking about it. I think that's a valid word in this, I mean, the push forces. So I think to be able to move the national government, you need a very strong movement. And that movement is also partly built now by mayors, because the mayors are under bigger stress than the national governments.
Well, I mean, how do we think this all happened? Was national governments making laws and policies that enable financialization? And if you think about something like pension funds are hugely important to the economy of a nation. So any government that wants to sort of steer pension fund in a certain way is going to obviously do so with temerity, with a timidness, because the pension funds are so important to the functioning of an economy. So is housing and this kind of, uber luxury development, et cetera. If you start looking at, what makes up the GDP of a country, and you'll find that this kind of housing, not housing for the people, but this kind of uber luxury housing and construction that goes with it is a huge part of economies. So if we're going to tackle it, we're asking governments to go against the structures that they themselves have created. So it's tough. I mean, it's tough. But I'm interested to know what your new president... yeah, exactly. Well, I'm interested to know, I mean, he's part of this, right? Could you ever change his mind? No. I mean, this is the problem we're up against.
Então, olha, como a gente estava falando, esse trabalho de defesa do direito à moradia como direito humano e a questão da legislação, por exemplo, que você falou, está perfeito. No Brasil, nós temos uma legislação bem protetiva, construída a partir da pressão do movimento social, né, tanto na Constituição Federal como nas leis municipais, né, locais. Temos, inclusive, proibição de retirada forçada de comunidades, mas o mercado tem um poder muito forte em cima dos lobbies. E isso, a pressão do mercado nos governos também é muito forte. Evidentemente, eu localizo essa mudança toda do Brasil com essa pressão que vem, né, que o filme também mostra. Na verdade, os interesses econômicos, eles são globais, as empresas estão em todos os lugares. Você não sabe quem está comprando as casas, você não sabe quem está fazendo o prédio. Então, existe um interesse internacional e, infelizmente, nós já tivemos uma mudança na legislação que já mostra que a tentativa nem é desregularizar, desregulamentar, né, mas é não deixar que a defesa do direito à moradia, a defesa do direito humano como um todo, avance no país que sempre foi visto no exterior como um grande negócio. O Brasil sempre foi um grande negócio. E as terras públicas é um outro grande negócio. Nós temos todo agora um trabalho que o Brasil, que o novo presidente vem fazendo, de mostrar o Brasil como um negócio fácil, né? Então, por isso, diminui a questão das licenças ambientais. Então, tem várias coisas que estão acontecendo que, evidentemente, é essa pressão, né? As coisas estão interligadas. É importante perceber, né, que esse é um movimento do mundo, né, que vai atingir todos os países e, claro, os mais pobres vão sofrer mais, o Rio vai sofrer mais. E, por isso, a importância de cada morador, cada indivíduo, ter consciência absoluta do seu direito. Porque eu acredito que, a partir daí, que esse movimento possa ganhar uma força, né? Cada pessoa desnaturalizar, né, o que o Patrick, né, falou, Frederic falou, que é essa coisa da naturalização do mercado, a naturalização da violação dos direitos. Isso faz parte todo de um jogo que interessa ao setor financeiro. Então, assim, não tenho uma boa perspectiva, mas eu acredito muito no potencial de trabalho e de luta e de mobilização que, afinal de contas, nós passamos no Rio por um processo grande de despejos, e o movimento deu uma certa resposta, deu respostas, e eu acho que é a partir desse movimento que a gente vai continuar, apesar desse quadro muito duro que a gente está vivendo no Brasil. Eu acredito muito nessa... E esse evento aqui, por exemplo, me dá muito ânimo, muita energia, porque eu acredito que esse movimento não é um movimento local, tem que ser um movimento realmente global. Nós temos que nos ligar em redes mesmo. Não pode ser um caso isolado, porque não é um caso isolado. Isso é importante, de fato.
Can I just add one thing? I mean, if we're talking about, I think the solution is political, and if we know, somebody told me that 50% of all money on the world stock markets are pension funds, pension fund money. So it's a lot of money, and as Joseph Stiglitz says, you can actually change the fiduciary frameworks of the funds. And there is a very strong movement now. We talk about divest oil, divest coal. I mean, the Church of England, the Church of Sweden, many churches since long has divested weapons, for example. So I mean, you can, if you can make, I mean, every union can actually bring it up in their own pension fund, that you should change the frameworks where you can invest the money, and then you shouldn't invest in climate change or in kicking out pensioners from their house.
But I'm struck that in Brazil has elected a president. Sorry, Brazil has elected a president who is actively saying he's probably, well, we know he's going to make things worse for the people who are feeling or suffering all these problems. There's a paradox here.
It's a paradox, but that's like national politics in many countries. It comes and goes, and hopefully Brazil will have a better president next time. I mean, this is the time we live in right now. I think the movements and the cities, because the cities still have to, I mean, in London you don't have in London you don't have the same government as you have in the national government. So I think the cities are maybe have to be the leaders in this struggle.
I guess what I would add is, to me, this is where international human rights law comes in, because what's good about international human rights law and what it really is about is accountability. It's an accountability mechanism for states. And so ideally, we could bring human rights law to bear on states and try to get states to meet their human rights obligations by regulating and creating new fiduciary obligations, et cetera, of pension funds, for example, or by changing, like, some people academics are starting to talk about whether it's possible to limit how many units a single owner can have, like Blackstone. How many can they, shouldn't we cap it? Can they have, so there are ideas out there, but we need a mechanism to hold states accountable, to get states to do what they should be doing. And for me, that is international human rights law, because it doesn't come and go with governments or, newly elected governments.
Well, I suppose what I always worry about human rights law is that I never see the challenge. Where will the challenge come? Where will the human rights law challenge come? Will it be at local level? Will it be at a government level?
Well, that's part of the role of a rapporteur. So, when the mission to Chile and Korea were opportunities for me to sit down with government as well as civil society, of course, and talk about what the government's human rights obligations are, and I issue a set of recommendations, and then I try to work with the government if they're willing to implement those recommendations. But there are other mechanisms within the UN human rights system where governments actually have to appear before UN human rights committees, and those committees are able to, again, put some pressure on governments to do what they're supposed to be doing under international human rights law. Part of the problem with this area is the human rights community is only coming to it now. And so there is a committee that's responsible for trying to get states to do what they should with the right to housing. And they've recently started to try to hammer states on financialization, but only in the last, well, really since we started working together and we started to make some noise.
But it's also about tax, it's about tax policy, it's about regulation, it's about planning, it's about a whole load of things, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, the tax havens is one thing then, for example. London is the biggest tax haven in the world, said Saviano. It's not in the film, but I mean, it's, so I mean, you could start. I mean, because all this criminal money that goes together with the tax evasive money that also comes in and destroys our cities. Can you block that flow a bit? It will make a hell of a difference.
There was a really interesting scene in Kreuzberg where you had the restaurateur who was very cynical. I think his words were, "The train has left. There's nothing you can do." And you had the local politician who was saying, "We're able to buy up properties. We're going for it. We've spent 40 million euros." I mean, there was two views there. On balance, are you optimistic? Which side of the fence are you, or do you see both?
I mean, that's my nature. I want to be an optimist because it's more fun to be an optimist than being pessimist. I think pessimists have less fun. So that's like how I try to live my life. But of course, it's a challenge. But I believe that people can change things. And what started up now gives us a lot of hope. Also because sometimes when I did this film, Bike versus Cars, people have been killed on their bicycles forever. It's been really dangerous to go on bikes. But suddenly a lot of people started to bike. And in London, for example, suddenly it's not only poor people who are on bikes, it's also middle class, lawyers, journalists. And when they get killed on the streets, the police moves, the legislation moves much quicker. So I think when now the middle class and upper middle class are hit by this phenomena, it's coming to be the biggest political issue. And it's there everywhere. And of course, this big issue is still lacking some kind of language. And I think that's what all of us should be part of to change it. And then I think change can come. It will not be easy, of course, but it will be fun.
Maria Lucia, at the end of the day, are you an optimist here? Do you think change is coming?
Sim, eu sou totalmente otimista. E cada pessoa tem um papel fundamental na defesa dos direitos, né? Eu acho que o importante é perceber a que lugar você está, né? Perfeito, ele percebe e faz um trabalho de fazer a denúncia, de levar o debate. Isso é muito otimismo, é perfeito. E existem necessidades tão básicas que o sistema não tem como acabar. E morar é um desses. Então, você vai precisar morar. Então, isso é um tema que vai tocar as pessoas, né? E eu acho que o mais importante que o filme coloca, e para a gente que faz esse trabalho de defender a moradia como um direito social, um direito humano, é apontar o problema. O problema, hoje, o filme mostra claramente que existe um problema nessa financiarização da propriedade, que poderia ser uma moradia e não uma mercadoria. Então, eu acho que isso é fantástico. Eu sou muito otimista, acredito na capacidade do ser humano de construir coisas positivas e coisas boas. Agora, claro, é difícil, não é fácil. Se você tem todo um sistema de lobby, se você tem todo um sistema financeiro, e aí voltando, por exemplo, para a pergunta, e como o Brasil elege uma pessoa como o nosso atual presidente, parte desses lobbies, existe toda uma construção de falas, que tende a nos dar medo, a nos tirar a esperança. Então, cabe a cada um de nós fazer esse trabalho contrário. Eu acho que isso é o meu ânimo. Então, eu sou muito otimista. Acho que nós temos muita chance de construir uma coisa melhor, né? Senão, não estaríamos hoje aqui. Nós já passamos por tantas coisas, a humanidade já passou por tantas situações dramáticas. Por que a gente não vai enfrentar? Agora, é preciso enfrentar. É preciso enfrentar que morar não pode ser um negócio, não pode ser um negócio que dá tanto lucro assim, não pode ser um negócio que só visa dar lucro, né? A gente tem que perceber que morar é um direito humano fundamental que precisa ser preservado. Então, não pode estar dentro de negócios, né? E eu acho que é importante, por exemplo, a questão dos fundos de pensões, até porque são pessoas que estão ali deixando seu dinheiro. Então, discutir como esses fundos participam dessa gentrificação, né, dessa retirada de moradias. Então, trabalhar isso também acho importante, porque você toca no ser humano. Então, eu sou muito otimista.
Leilani, there was that very amusing scene at the United Nations where you're speaking and the camera pans to people checking their phones, falling asleep, and so on. I wondered if that scene was meant to suggest that, perhaps we shouldn't be too optimistic, that there's a sort of
Well, he claimed he's an optimist, and he made the film, so... whatever. I'm an optimist despite that scene. Yeah, I am an optimist. I mean, first of all, we're on an unsustainable path, so something has to be done. What is happening now is unsustainable. One thing I wanted to mention, that of course the film can't cover everything, of course, but the scene where I'm looking at this graph and you see, the cost of housing in Toronto rising like this and incomes like this, that graph is true the world over. And in fact, it's worse in the global south than it is in the global north. So in the global south, it looks like this and like stagnating. So that being said, I am optimistic because this is unsustainable, one. Two, well, I'm a sore loser, so I'm not gonna lose this one, no way. So.
At this stage, I was going to ask the audience whether they would like to ask some questions. And I actually, it's really difficult to see. That's better, we've got some lights, great. And do we need microphones? Yes. Yes, I think we do. Okay, I'm going to go to the lady at the front with the red top. If you could say who you are, okay. That would be great.
Thank you so much for your great discussions and movies. It's exactly fantastic, and I really appreciate Frederick and then everybody is involved in developing this great movie. And then my question, so I took all the story really personal, because now I'm working for human rights, including the rights to housing, and then I used to be working in finance, also struggling to live in New York as a student. So my question is, after 2008, a big financial shock, there was a big criticism on the financial sector and the private sector involved in that, a big wave. But it seems like it doesn't really change, get changed after 2008. They're older. So my question is, 2008, a big financial shock, and then a surge of discussion of asking the private sector to be accountable including business and human rights discussions. What do you think about like impact of those, those issues? And also, like, sorry for asking many questions, but I'm really concerned about the sort of like a gap between like rich and poor, not only in terms of money, but also like knowledge and like a sort of knowledge. Like the financial sector is getting more and more complicated, so it's really difficult for those like those people in a vulnerable situation understand what the situation they're in. So what do you think about we can sort of correct those kind of gap of in knowledge and rebuild the sort of connection between people?
But the financial crash was a lost opportunity, was it not? I mean, we had that opportunity for you to have the discussion with finance and human rights and so on, but we missed it, didn't we?
For me, it's the financial sector has been great in crisis management. They hire PR companies to handle their crisis, how to package it, and they sold it in a way that was really good for them. That's what Stiglitz says. They saved the bank and they kicked out the house owners and they gave the money to the hedge funds. And meanwhile, we were talking about Greece being irresponsible. We were talking about Spain being irresponsible. Greece was the big issue, remember? It was the Greeks who actually was about to take down the whole shit. And then we forgot about these guys, Sorry, not you. So,
I mean, to understand what's happening now, you have to understand 2008. The global financial crisis facilitated this. It made it happen. It was because there were so many foreclosed mortgages that Blackstone got the idea of creating this new asset class called single-family residences. And so, in fact, it's worse than we think. It's not just that it was a lost opportunity. It was used to create this mess that we're in. And on the issue of knowledge, I actually contest the idea that these rich financial actors have this knowledge and the everyday people, poor people, don't. I have never met a person who's low income or living in homelessness or living in an informal settlement without access to water, et cetera. I've never met a person in dire housing circumstances who did not know what their human rights are. They don't use that language, but they know that they are suffering a lack of dignity, and they know that that's wrong, especially, even worse in affluent countries. And so they have a very precise knowledge of what's going on in the world. They just use a different language.
Maria Lucia, do you want to come in on that?
Não, essa crise, na verdade, é isso, né? Ela, na verdade, mostrou como essa regulação do sistema financeiro não é capaz de dar conta da necessidade da moradia. Por isso, acho que até a discussão de como fazer, né? A gente esperava, a gente não, mas quem analisou essa crise de 2008, no final esperava que o sistema fosse explodir e, ao contrário, né? Porque a crise gera mais lucro, eles conseguem extrair mais lucro da crise. E, por isso, é fundamental que essa contestação venha pela sociedade civil. É importante assumir isso. Esperar que o sistema financeiro vai fazer essa regulação e vai mudar é impossível, né? Então, tem que ter muita pressão da sociedade civil e, claro, pressão nos governos, né, para regular. Então, eu acho que é isso. Não é um caminho fácil, né? Se fosse fácil, a gente já tinha conseguido mudar, né, evidentemente. Mas, assim, a gente precisa ter consciência dele primeiro, entender o problema para saber o tamanho do problema e como enfrentar esse problema. Então, é isso.
Acho que... Yes, the gentleman in the green shirt.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, thanks for the film and all the great work you're doing. The shift project you're doing, you know, there's projects out there where communities are gathering up and buying property off the market and then making it part of like a community good or creating greater social commons. Like I think in Germany there's a big project where they bought like 1,000 dwellings and it's owned by this community. Why did you omit those kind of projects in the film? And I mean, maybe there wasn't enough time, but and is that potentially, you know, some regulation around making it easier for those community kind of projects to organize? Do you see that as part of the cure as well in this challenge?
It might totally be part of the cure. I think we have to be innovative to change the world, to be creative, and that's part of it. For me, the film, I mean, to make a film that makes us see this situation from a new perspective, that was my ambition. So I wasn't so focused about solutions. Normally solutions get very technical. It's very hard to tell them in film, and it will be very heavy, a very long film. Add a few hours more. Would you sit there still? No. Or, I mean, I think you have to make special films about these ideas, and they are totally worth a film, so just go for it.
Leilani, is that the solution?
I think it's important. Community land trusts and that sort of thing. I think it's important. I don't think it's the solution. There isn't a silver bullet, excuse the expression here. I think there's some really interesting things happening at that grassroots level. But the only thing with community land trusts is you have to remember that 217 trillion that Saskia mentions, which is the global value of all real estate in the world. Residential real estate is valued at 163 trillion. That's a shitload of money. These are big players. I mean, private equity firms, Frederick's already said it, private equity firms can snatch up property like that. It's not just that they have an abundance of capital, it's liquid capital, and they're getting it from banks. Deutsche Bank is one of the big ones, for example. So you know, you have a small community that's trying to buy some land. Think about how hard that is in the face of a private equity firm snatching up properties. I do think these are important movements, though, because they're a pushback.
I'm going to take some more questions. There was a lady on the right there.
Merci beaucoup Hélène Pour, ancienne fonctionnaire internationale qui n'avait pas le temps d'acheter des montres pendant qu'elle travaillait. Trois toutes petites choses en français, enfin dans la langue française. Les optimistes peuvent dire « soyons réalistes, tentons l'impossible ». Ça, c'est une proposition. La deuxième chose, c'est que dans ce film, j'ai été quelque peu gênée, ayant fréquenté les instances internationales, par une certaine naïveté. Et je voudrais poser la question, les gouvernements, notamment les gouvernements occidentaux, cherchent à attirer au maximum les investissements. Comment pouvez-vous agir contre ces efforts-là? Et enfin, pourquoi ne pas constituer une internationale des locataires? Parce que là, on serait beaucoup plus nombreux peut-être que les investisseurs. Merci.
I think the word was naivety there. Do you think that it's naive to believe that we can stop this inevitable role of cash and investment?
I like to be naive. I think we all should be naive. I think it's a good thing. That's a good thing with children. They are naive and they still think are possible. So I don't mind being naive. It's maybe not an answer, but yeah. That's a short one.
Marie and Lucia, are we naive?
Can we really keep foreign investment from flowing into countries?
I mean, there are countries that are trying to stop it. New Zealand, for example, did it recently. So they are now stopping foreign investment in housing. So that's with the new government in New Zealand, happened last year. Was it this year? Last year.
Well,
So it can happen. And then, of course, all these legislation have their own problems, but but politicians can do things.
I mean, Leilani, in your report last year, you mentioned one or two places where there has been progress.
Yeah.
One or two you could mention that we could take heart from.
Yeah, I mean, Singapore is the, example that most people point their fingers at, but I think New Zealand is now an interesting example. You may be surprised to know that New Zealand has had one of the hottest housing markets, real estate markets in the world. And the new prime minister, the only prime minister to mention, the only world leader to mention at the recent World Economic Forum housing and well-being as fundamental for states to think about. But, Singapore has had, the thing is they've been doing it for 50 years or more than 50 years, but they have had a very high tax rate on investment in property. And you get dinged through taxes if you sell property after 1 year or after 2 years. So there are things like that. And I think through regulation, you could actually curb, it's not just foreign investment, we have to be careful about that, but I think you could curb this investment. I mean, it's just that so many opposite things are happening. I mean, there's a whole thing called golden visa programs, where if you purchase property above a certain amount, you get basically a visa to live in, let's say, Europe. You can travel throughout Europe. In some cases, Cyprus,
Malta,
Portugal,
basically also London, I would say.
Yeah, I think Greece has it. I think Spain. Yeah. No, maybe not Spain. But in any of, Spain has it. But you could just not have those laws, just make that impossible.
I'm going to get some more questions. There was a gentleman, standing, that's the guy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Milun Kothari, a housing activist from New Delhi. I had two questions. One is, congratulations on the film. I wanted to ask why the focus was only on the financial big mega sector. I mean, I live in a city in Delhi where we don't have Blackstone, we don't have very little Airbnb, but we have a colossal housing crisis. So even if you could get to these guys, that's not necessarily going to solve the global housing crisis, and I just wanted to respond to that. And second, Leilani, I just wanted to ask you, it's great this work with the shift, but do you see the mayors that have signed doing anything to control speculation? And I'd like, I mean, the mayor of Geneva is not here, but I'd like to know what he's going to do for Geneva,
Leilani, if you take the second question, I think just in terms of time,
Yes.
The mayors, are they doing anything?
Well, the way the shift works is that they are required to do something. So we never wanted the shift to be about ribbon cutting. That would not be of interest to me, as you can well imagine. So the pledge that the mayor signed says that he's committing to take some action. And UCLG, the United Cities and Local Government, one of the partners in the shift, is working with cities. They've developed a Cities for Housing declaration. That declaration pinpoints 4 areas that cities must work on as part of this shift, and it includes trying to curb this investment. And the next step will be to develop action plans in that regard. And I'm, of course, assuming those action plans will be human rights-based. But of course, time will tell. But it's a staged process, and it's not going to happen overnight. But the expectation is action.
Okay, I'm going to take 3 questions. If you could keep the questions quite brief.
Sorry.
A lady at the front in the red, gentleman over there with the brown jumper, and the gentleman right at the back as well.
If I may, sorry.
3.
No, just to answer the question of the gentleman and to build on what Leilani just said, the idea of signing the shift tonight was also to be able to see next year what has been done in Geneva. So the idea of the festival is also at some point to help to hold accountable at least the people in Geneva for having signed this and see what will happen during the next year. So you're definitely welcome to come back, because that's exactly the idea, is that we actually want to, because it's in the Geneva Constitution, it has been written down, but nothing has been really implemented. So that's something we would like to actually look forward to.
Thank you, Karen.
Sorry for the hijacking.
That's okay. 3 quick questions. No. No mic.
Does not. Sorry. Good evening. First, my name is Frédéric Anotier. I'm the director of the Human Rights Cities Network. First of all, I would like to thank for, I think it's fantastic, and I would like to commend the work, because what is essential, as it has been said, it has, first of all, everybody has a role to play to promote human rights. And what I see which is essential here, it's not only raising an essential question, but mainly to give access to information. And what I found extremely important in that movie is that the problem of human rights is translated and accessible to anyone. And of course, the poorest has a role to play, and they need to understand what is the issue. Everybody needs to understand. This is a question of awareness raising and information. So my question is, what are you planning to do to promote and to give the access freely of this information to the people who are concerned? Because as you said, Frédéric, it's also the culture of a city which is in danger, which is threatened. So what are the next steps to make the actor, the one who are the people concerned, to become actors of their own life and their own right, to give them their rights in their hand, giving them that information which shouldn't stay only here?
Okay, thank you. And the second question, gentleman in the middle. Yeah.
Oui, bonsoir, merci pour ce beau film. Donc, je suis président d'une association genevoise qui s'appelle Citoyens pour la justice publique. Et il se trouve que j'ai travaillé aussi dans l'immobilier. J'ai été dégoûté pour plusieurs choses. Un blanchiment monstrueux à Genève qui a fait monter les prix. Un petit bémol, heureusement, le gouvernement suisse peut de temps en temps réagir. Quand il y a eu la grande crise immobilière de 89-91, ça s'est continué encore. Eh bien, justement, un peu comme Singapour, c'était interdit, ça a été interdit disons, pas tout à fait interdit, mais si vous achetez et vous vendez une année plus tard, donc l'État vous prend 50%. Du bénéfice. Donc c'est une régulation, mais ça ne suffit pas. Moi, je pense qu'il faut changer carrément le modèle économico-politique. On a un modèle qu'on appelle néolibéralisme, mais les gens ils comprennent rien ce que ça veut dire. Alors j'aimerais savoir si vous pensez que c'est...
Monsieur, vous avez une question?
Oui, j'aimerais savoir si vous êtes d'accord de changer le modèle économico-politique que j'appelle actuellement le libéral capitaliste dérégulé, pour des autres systèmes dans lesquels la puissance publique a le pouvoir sur la puissance financière des capitalistes financiers. Voilà.
Thank you, merci.
I'm ready.
And, okay, one last question.
Yeah, for the reporter, I was thinking that needed that the reporter of the United Nations, you need to make a movement. They call shifts that I found really well, but that shows something about the United Nations. Why the reporter of the United Nations need to make a movement? They call shift, you know. Je pourrais répéter la question en français? le fait que la rapporteuse des Nations Unies, elle a besoin de créer un mouvement qui s'appelle Shift, ça montre quelque chose des Nations Unies. Vous comprenez?
OK.
Juste pour finir, en fait, Nations Unies, il manque quelque chose. Des États unis. En fait, c'est des États. Et les États, on a bien compris, ils sont soumis à la financiarisation, au système économique néolibéral. Voilà, c'est ça les Nations Unies. Donc, et ça montre que la rapporteuse, elle doit créer un mouvement qui s'appelle Shift, en fait. Juste.
Okay. Okay. Now, I am use my chairman's prerogative to kind of bring these three questions together, and I think that the question that possibly all of you were asking in different ways, which is, what are the next steps, both for you and for the movement? And I'm going to ask each person on the panel. Maria Lucia, for you, what are the next steps?
Concordo com uma mulher que falou na plateia que a gente precisa difundir ao máximo o direito, difundir ao máximo a informação e tocar ao máximo as pessoas, especialmente as mais atingidas, para que uma mudança venha, né? E aí, pegando um pouco da outra pergunta, da questão da ingenuidade, de fato, é ingenuidade pensar que isso vai se dar com uma assinatura de um documento só, com uma promulgação de uma lei. A gente vive isso no dia a dia. Existem leis, existem documentos que não são respeitados. Então, se não for a partir de um movimento que seja global, mas que especialmente dê voz àqueles que são mais atingidos, eu não vejo uma saída, mas eu acho que isso é o próximo passo, né? Esse é um pouco o trabalho que fazemos no Rio, pela Defensoria Pública, dialogar ao máximo e questionar ao máximo esse sistema, né, que realmente não é o sistema ideal, né? Se o mercado desse conta da necessidade humana, nós viveríamos em outro mundo. Então, a gente sabe que essa forma de produzir a sociedade ela não está dando certo. E é preciso mudar. Mas essa mudança também não é fácil. E depende de cada um de nós. E cada um de nós, às vezes, numa posição confortável. Você não é atingido diretamente, mas você tem uma responsabilidade com o outro. Então, isso é importante. Eu acho que esse é o grande desafio, né? Como tocar as pessoas para que elas saiam da sua acomodação e, às vezes, saia da falta de esperança, porque muita gente não tem mais esperança, vive numa situação de miséria tal que não consegue dar um passo adiante. Então, por isso, o papel de cada um de nós aqui é importante, por isso o papel de defensores de direitos humanos e de pessoas que trabalham com direitos humanos é tão importante, né? Ir às comunidades, dialogar com as comunidades, questionar esse sistema financeiro, por que tem que ser assim, por que as crises elas são sempre colocadas na conta dos mais pobres, enquanto isso alguns enriquecem cada vez mais. Então, é um mundo muito desigual, muito desumano. Então, eu acho que é o nosso trabalho. Seria ingenuidade a gente acreditar que isso vai vir sem uma luta muito grande. Então, por isso, eu não sou ingênua, eu sou muito consciente de que não é uma tarefa fácil, mas não é uma tarefa que a gente possa deixar de fazer. Eu não posso deixar de lutar por direitos humanos vendo uma desumanização, porque a financiarização é isso, ela desumaniza as cidades, desumaniza os seres humanos. A gente passa a não ser mais ser humano, a gente passa a ser um aplicador na bolsa, né? Alguém que olha a vida de um lugar que não é mais o lugar da humanidade, de encontrar o outro. Então, acho que isso é uma tarefa nossa e acho que, a partir daí, a gente pode mudar o mundo, sim. Eu acredito nisso.
Frederick, we're finishing up here. So
yes, I will be really short.
Yeah.
I've just made a film, and that's my job. And the cool thing with the film is that this film can be used as a tool for people who want to make change. So if you want to bring the film to your town, to your school, to your workplace, you can do it, and you can talk to people and start to create this new language, the counter language for the other lingo. Maybe then you can be part of a change, and you can use this film.
Very briefly, how do they get your film?
Sorry?
How do they get your film to show in their village?
They can start to follow us on the social media, push the film on, and you can follow me on Twitter and so on, and then you can just ask me, and then we will direct you. We'll find a way. It's not so hard. It's, yeah.
Leilani, finishing up now. Your last thoughts.
Yes, my last thoughts. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep pushing back by growing the shift and by promoting Push the Film. And I'm going to drink a lot of wine, which is what I think we should all do now.
I second Leilani. I think drinking wine is a very good idea. Well, this is it. Thank you very much for coming. You've been a fantastic audience. I hope you enjoyed the film. Thanks to Frederick and Leilani for the film. Thanks for Maria Lucia, who's come all the way to from Brazil to watch the film, which is amazing. And thank you very much indeed for coming. Good night.